What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Happy Friday. Today's video is going to be my breastfeeding tips and tricks. This is going to be a two-part video. This is going to be part one, which is going to be the tips and tricks, and then part two is going to be the breastfeeding must-haves. I just thought it would be easier to do it in two different parts because then we don't have to have a 35-minute long video. We can just have two parts to it. So this is part one. I'm going to look at my phone like normal because I just kind of took down some notes of things that I wanted to talk about. I don't know if you can see that, but it's quite a bit and I'm just not going to remember all of it. I do want to start this off by saying I am not a professional. I am not a lactation consultant. This is all based on my personal experience. I have 3 kids. So far, Ellie has been my most successful journey with breastfeeding, but I've kind of found things that work for us, and what works for me might not work for you, and that's perfectly fine. Also, if you choose not to breastfeed or breastfeeding doesn't work out for you, fed is best, and I think that's one thing that's important to remember. A lot of people are very pro breastfeeding, and that's perfectly fine, but it's not okay to put down another mother who chose not to breastfeed and who formula feeds. If your baby's fed and happy, that's all that matters. So this is just a video for you guys if you're interested in what works for us, things that I found, and like that. It's not a diss on anyone who chose not to breastfeed. Perfectly fine. I haven't breastfed all of my kids, so this is just my experience. So first I want to talk about my experience with Brayden and Dominic. My experience with Brayden was very short. When I had Brayden, I was 17. I was very uneducated. I thought that breastfeeding was just something that happened. I thought that you had your baby, you put them on the latch, and they latch perfectly, and they eat, and you're good to go. But that's not what happens. I was also very self-conscious of my own body. I did not want people seeing my boobs. I did not, I just wasn't comfortable with it. And so, I gave up really easily. I didn't try. I thought because he didn't latch on right away that he wasn't going to latch, and I didn't keep going with it. I did pump for maybe a month with him, but I didn't produce very much with the pump, and I was trying to pump while in high school, and that was kind of hard because I couldn't just keep leaving class to go pump. So our breastfeeding journey was not long at all. It just was not that great. I didn't have a lot of support. I didn't reach out for help, so that just wasn't great. With Dominic, it was pretty decent at first. I breastfed him pretty, he was exclusively breastfed until 6 weeks. At 6 weeks, I gave him a bottle because that's what's recommended for bottle feeding, and from then on, it was a disaster. As soon as I gave him the bottle, I think I picked the wrong bottle. And I gave him one. I don't think I gave him a newborn nipple. I didn't even think about it, and he preferred the bottle over breast. So from 6 weeks until about 3 months, when I completely stopped nursing him, that was rough. He was very fussy, very cranky all the time. He didn't want to nurse, so that was really hard for me. After about 3 months, I decided I was going to give up because he wasn't gaining the weight that he was needing to gain, and I just started pumping. I don't know if I'm just not very good with a pump or if my body doesn't respond well to a pump or what, but I did not produce enough to keep up with him. My sister-in-law was nice enough to donate some of her milk to him, so that helped. But the freezer stash that I had and the donor milk, it wasn't enough for him, so eventually we did switch him to formula. With Ellie, it's been completely different so far. She's almost 4 months old. She's exclusively breastfed. She really will not take a bottle, so she nurses a lot, and it's been great. It's just been an all-around good experience. So I want to start off with when they're first born. Perfect. And that's not the way that it works. A baby has to learn. They have that reflex to suck, but they have to learn how to breastfeed. So it's something that you have to work with them on. They'll come off a lot. Some babies get it perfect right away and it's perfectly fine, but other babies just need a little bit more help, as well as mom needing a little bit more help. So while you're in the hospital, ask for help if you need it. They will have a lactation consultant come by if you need it. The nurses are very helpful as well. So just ask for that help if you need it, and just realize that it's a learning process for both you and baby. You want to make sure that you have that right latch. You want their mouth to be wide open. You don't want their lips to be curled in or down. because that's going to cause an incorrect latch. It's going to make it painful. So you want to make sure that their latch is correct. If latch isn't correct, go ahead and take your pinky finger and you can put it in their cheek right here and break that suction, and pull them off and relatch them. It's perfectly fine to relatch them. With Dominic, I relatched him all the time when we first started nursing because his latch wasn't correct. And you can tell when a latch is correct. You can just, for me, I can just feel like, okay, that latch is off, not okay. So it's perfectly fine to break that suction and latch them again if their latch is wrong. Which brings me to pain. A lot of people will tell you that breastfeeding is not supposed to hurt. In my opinion, with breastfeeding, the first 3 weeks are very painful. In my mind, your nipple is getting used to that constant suction. And I think it hurts for like the first 3 weeks. It is awful. And Ellie has a perfectly fine latch. I don't have any problems now. But for the first 3 weeks with her and Dominic, it was so painful. I developed blood blisters. Some people develop cracks and bleeding. I was lucky enough to not have that either time, but I did get a blood blister. And for me, it does hurt. My nipples feel very raw and they're just painful. So I think a lot of people hear that if it hurts, something's wrong, so they automatically stop breastfeeding when it hurts. So whenever I talk to somebody about breastfeeding, I let them know it absolutely does hurt at first, and that doesn't necessarily mean that something's wrong. You can definitely ask for help with a lactation consultant and make sure baby's latch is correct. But I think that it's perfectly normal to experience some pain while your nipples are getting used to that sort of action that it's not normally used to. So that brings me to ways to help that. What works for me is lanolin. I like to use the Lansonel one. That's the one that I use. I've also used the Mandela one, which is fine. But man, cake those babies in that, okay? You get a lot, you just smear it on the nipple, you're good to go. It helps a lot. It really, really, really helps. So definitely use lanolin. One thing that works for me and that I still do to this day is breastfeeding on demand. So breastfeeding on demand is really important to me for establishing your supply, because then your body gets used to what your baby needs. As they get a little bit older, they will stop nursing so frequently, but I think kind of setting a schedule is just hard for you and hard for baby. We don't have a schedule. When she cries, I nurse her, and my saying is, when in doubt, whip it out. I don't care what she's crying for. If she's crying, I will nurse her. I mean, obviously, like, I'll pick her up and, see if that works if I've just fed her, or I'll kind of bounce her around like this. But if that doesn't calm her down, I nurse her. Yeah, so breastfeeding on demand is super important to me. I think that it just kind of helps establish that supply and keep it going. You don't want to say, oh, I'm just going to nurse her for 10 minutes and then she's full and leave it at that. I let her nurse as long as she wants to. And that kind of works for us. That's another thing that I think kind of I did wrong with Dominic, is they say that, like, you can nurse baby on one side for 10 minutes and then switch them. I stuck to that. At the 10-minute mark, I would stop him and switch him to the other side. Someone's crying. So with Dominic, I would breastfeed him on one side for about 10 minutes, and then I would switch him, and I just kind of kept doing that, and I think that it just kind of messed things up. With Ellie, I let her nurse as long as she wants to. She's a pretty patient baby, so she'll nurse on one side for quite a while. And then if she's still fussy for some reason, sometimes I will switch her to the other side. But typically we just nurse on one side per feeding, and that works for us. Another thing that I think is really beneficial is set short-term goals for yourself. So don't go into this and say, I'm going to breastfeed for a year. Because then when you hit that 1 week mark and you're struggling because it's painful, you're going to be disappointed. And so for me, I like to set small goals. I like to say, I'm going to make it to 3 days. Okay, now I'm going to make it to a week. Now I'm going to make it to 2 weeks. And when you hit those little goals, it feels so nice. It's just nice making it to those little check marks and saying, I did it, because then you just want to keep going. I feel like when you set yourself up for those really long-term goals, it takes a while to reach them, and so you don't really feel rewarded or like you've done anything. So I like to set myself short-term goals, and obviously I have an idea of when I don't necessarily have an idea of when I want to stop nursing her. But for me, I know that I'd like to nurse her past a year, but I still like to set those little goals, especially because I have failed at the last 2 times that I was breastfeeding. So I just like to set those little short-term goals for myself. That way I feel good about it. One other thing that I did with Dominic and that I've also done with Ellie, I absolutely do not keep any formula in the house, because in my mind there have been times where I'm sitting there nursing both of them and it just hurts so bad in those first couple of weeks, and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. So if I had formula in the house, I probably would have given in and given them a bottle. And so when I don't keep formula in the house, I tell myself there's nothing else here. This is how they're going to eat, and you're going to do it because your baby needs to eat. And so that kind of helps me not give in to the pain and not give in to that hard part, because it is hard. It's very hard, but once you push through that, it gets so much easier. So I don't keep any formula in the house. We usually don't keep any bottles in the house either. I did this time, but we didn't have anything to put in it, so that's perfectly fine. With bottles, I struggle with this, because with Dominic I gave him a bottle at 6 weeks like it was recommended, and with Ellie I decided I was going to wait, and she won't take a bottle, but Dominic preferred the bottle. So I don't really know when the best time is to give them a bottle. I think it really depends on the baby. Some babies have no nipple confusion, some babies prefer the bottle, some babies still prefer the breast. It really just depends, so you kind of just have to make that decision on your own. So I want to talk about like nutrition and water intake. A lot of people think that you have to drown yourself in water every day so that you stay hydrated and can keep up your milk production. But actually, drinking more water throughout the day, the more water you have, it doesn't really mean you're going to make more milk. You just want to be hydrated. So they recommend that you drink till you drink to your thirst. So if your thirst is quenched, you're drinking enough. You don't have to overdrink. You don't have to drink 2 gallons of water a day to keep up with your milk supply. You just want to be hydrated. If you're hydrated, it's fine. And you also don't have to just drink water. You can drink something else and your body will pull the water from it. Obviously, if you're drinking soda all day, you probably won't be very hydrated, but you don't have to drink just water. For me, I'm not a water person, so I probably don't even get in like a gallon of water a day. But my milk supply is fine. So you don't have to drown yourself in water. You also don't have to eat your whole house. You'll probably want to, because as you're breastfeeding, your appetite increases, but it's the same thing. You drink to quench your thirst and you eat to satisfy your hunger. So that's about that. Another thing I want to say is, when you're pregnant, do your research. Look into breastfeeding classes if you want to take it. Just look online and just kind of study and understand how the whole process works, because I feel like that gives you a better chance right off the bat, because you're a little bit more educated. I loved watching videos on YouTube of other moms' experiences. I think that those are more helpful to me rather than the research that they give you, because everybody's different and you can't expect your body to be the exact same as this research. So I think just like personal experiences is a little bit better for me. I feel like it's more real. I don't know, I like personal experience over like the research. Okay. And also trust your body. When your baby is born, this is what we were meant to do. We were meant to give birth. We were meant to nourish our babies, and just trust your body. I spent so much time with Dominic just stressing over if I was producing enough, if I was giving, if he had enough, if he was full, and I just spent so much time stressing that I got to enjoy the experience, but most of the time I was stressed out because I wanted to make sure that my body was doing what it's supposed to, and it will. Just relax, enjoy it. I absolutely love just sitting here with her, nursing her. It's one of my favorite things. We do it pretty much all day. But seriously, just trust your body. Your body will do what it needs to do. With that, I want to talk about supply. So a lot of people think that if a baby is fussy or constantly wanting to nurse, or if they only pump like an ounce of milk, that they don't have a good supply. I've seen some women post on Facebook that they weren't leaking, so they thought that they had no milk, or that when they pushed on their breasts they weren't hard, so they thought that they had nothing, and none of that is true. Babies nurse for more than just like hunger. They nurse for comfort. They nurse for all kinds of things. And so just because your baby wants to nurse all the time doesn't mean that baby is starving. What you want to check is you want to check their urine output. So if they're having 6 or more wet diapers a day, you're good. And you also want to make sure that they're gaining weight. Obviously, if they're not gaining weight and their failure to thrive or something like that, then there could be an issue. But don't just assume that because baby is nursing a lot and nursing frequently that you don't have enough milk for them. A lot of women, like I said, think that if you only pump an ounce or you don't pump anything, that you have nothing. Babies are able to draw the milk out a lot better than a pump is. Some women don't respond as well to pumps as others do. So I would not use your milk output while pumping as a guide to your supply. It's not an indication at all. So don't go by that. Another thing is, if your breasts are usually only hard when you're engorged. It can take a while for your supply to regulate. So once your supply regulates, your breasts aren't going to be hard as often because you're not going to be as engorged as you were in the beginning. There are times where if I go, like when I go into work on Fridays, today I didn't pump because I had something else to do. So my breasts, I was engorged when I got home, and that's perfectly fine, but your breasts are not going to be hard all the time. Usually they're not between feedings for me. It's just when she goes a long period of time without eating. So yeah, just check that urine output, make sure baby's gaining weight, and you're good to go. Ask for help when you need it. It's perfectly fine to reach out to someone, reach out to a fellow mom. If you know me personally and you need help, I'm perfectly happy to help you if I can. Reach out to a lactation consultant. They have places that you can go for that to get their help. When I was pregnant with Brayden, or when I had Brayden, his doctor referred us to a lactation consultant because we were having trouble, and so you can just do, there's different people that you can reach out to. When your baby is first born, a lot of people think that because their milk didn't come in right away, that they're not going to have enough. Your baby's stomach when they're first born is the size of a cherry, so it's like tiny, super, super tiny, and the colostrum that you have is perfect. They're not even really nursing because they're hungry when they're first born, so supply is not something that you have to worry about in those first couple of days. It does take a few days for your milk to come in. Some people's milk comes in sooner than others, and it's perfectly fine. Just relax and trust your body and understand that this is what we were meant to do. And like I said, if you need help, ask for help. Alright guys, so that is it for part 1 of my breastfeeding series. If you liked it, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Also, if you have any breastfeeding advice that I didn't mention that you think is good, go ahead and leave it in the comments. That way other people can see it and see what other moms are doing to make this experience better. Breastfeeding is hard. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. And everyone's experience is different. So like I said, I'm not a lactation consultant. I'm not a professional. This is just my experience as a mom after having 3 kids. Follow me on social media if you don't already. My Instagram will be right after this. And I will see you guys on Wednesday for my breastfeeding must-haves. Bye!